In this section, I'm going to talk about an overview of protozoa. So protozoa are about 65,000 species. Most members are harmless, and they inhabit water and soil, but a few species are parasites responsible for hundreds of millions of infections in humans each year. So protozoans are single-celled, and they contain all the major eukaryotic organelles except for chloroplasts and cell walls. They do not have chloroplasts because they can't do photosynthesis, and they don't have a cell wall. Organelles can be highly specialized into structures that are similar to mouths, digestive systems, reproductive tracts, and even legs to help them move. They're heterotrophic, so they require their food in complex organic form. They have to eat other organisms or eat nutrients to survive. They can't make their own food through photosynthesis. There are free-living and parasitic species. Free-living species are going to scavenge dead plant or animal debris, and they graze on live cells of bacteria and algae. Parasitic species live in the fluids of the host, such as plasma, and in digestive juices. They're going to survive on consuming those fluids. They may actively feed on tissues as well. Unlike algae are classified based on their color. Protozoa are classified based on how they move or their style of locomotion. So the amoeboids have pseudopods, which are false feet. Amoeboids' motion will move by using this false foot. So most amoeba have this like squiggly type shape. And when they want to move forward, they will extend part of their membrane forward, and then the rest of the organism kind of oozes forward along with it. Flagellated have flagella, so they're going to have tails, and these tails can be on one side, on two sides, they can be all around. We'll learn more about flagellar arrangements when we talk about flagella in bacteria. But they vary in number from one to several. So they could have like a tuft of flagella, they could have flagella on each side or all the way around. Ciliated have cilia, and cilia are distributed over the entire surface of the cell or a large component of the cell. So a ciliated microorganism is going to have these little cilia, and they may be all the way around, but you may only obviously see them on one side or the other. Not many ciliated protozoa are going to be human pathogens. There's a lot of amoeba, a lot of flagellated ones. There's only really one major ciliated human pathogen that can also infect animals, and that is Bacillus coli. With the apicomplexans, they have no obvious motility structures, so they're considered non-mobile or non-motile. Each protozoan typically has two stages of life, a trophozoite and a cyst stage. The trophozoite is the moving, breathing, living, active form of the organism. So it's the motile feeding stage. It requires a lot of food and moisture to remain active. The cyst stage is the dormant stage. This is usually formed when conditions become unfavorable for growth and feeding, and it's an important factor in the spread of disease. So if you look at this next picture, this is the typical life cycle of a protozoan. And I'm going to use like Giardia lamblia as an example. So let's pretend that someone comes down with giardosis. That's an infection with Giardia lamblia in the intestine that typically causes diarrhea, greasy stool, a lot of abdominal discomfort, but it's easily treatable by anti-protozoan drugs. So we start with the trophozoite, and the trophozoite is this active feeding, moving stage, and this is alive inside of the intestines. It's working its way through the host's intestines and eating their nutrients. Then, as it gets toward the large intestine, what happens there? It absorbs water out of the stool in order to form stool. So in this location, water is being absorbed out to concentrate the stool, and because it's drying out the stool, this cyst, or this trophozoite, is going to start turning into a cyst. So drying and a lack of nutrients is going to cause this trophozoite to turn into a cyst. So finally you have a mature cyst. and then the person will defecate. And when that person defecates, the cyst is going to be eliminated from the body. The cyst is the transmissive form. If a trophozoite were to leave the body, it would likely die in the environment before it would actually infect a new host, unless there was direct consumption. Like sometimes animals will lick each other's butts and they get directly infected that way. People don't usually do that, so the most common way to get this is contamination on food or drinking contaminated water, an indirect source rather than a direct source. So the cyst stage is the transmissive stage, while the trophozoite is not transmissive. It's not going to survive in the environment. The only way to get it through this factor would be direct contact. So we have this cyst, and now the cyst is going to go into a new environment. So someone else drinks contaminated water, and that contaminated water contained the cyst. So the cyst is going to get into the intestine of the next person and the new host, and it's going to hatch open and emerge, and then the trophozoite is reactivated, and now it's alive again. And they cycle through this every time it goes through a new host.